Hello and welcome to Gardening at 58 North. In this video I'd like to give you guys an update on my two fuchsia plants here. They might look dead, but they're just coming into spring, so they've lost all their leaves over winter time. I'm just going to do a little bit of pruning to bring them back to a more tidy kind of state and to remove any of the dead branches and just to make sure that they're ready for spring basically. So I'm going to start with this one here, as this fuchsia has a lot less needing to be done to it than my large trained fuchsia on the left here. So as you can see from this fuchsia, it's been quite badly hit by the frost over winter. I did check the label and it's supposed to take down to -5, -10 degrees, and we only got about -4 on my balcony this winter. But it has killed off all the top growth, so although it said it was fully hardy, it wasn't actually fully hardy, the top half. The roots might have been fully hardy, but certainly I've lost most of the stems from the top. But that's not a big issue, that happens quite a lot to most of the fuchsias here in Scotland. If you don't protect the top half from the frost will normally kill them down either to the ground or down to some of the thicker stems, but they always respond really well. And to be honest, even if it didn't die back, I would give it a hard prune, because fuchsia produce their flowers on this year's new growth, so the harder you prune them, the more growth they'll put out, and generally the more flowers. So I'll just start now. I'll start having a look around, seeing where I can see any new growth and cutting back to where there's still living material. So having a close look, I can actually see some green shoots further down here on the stems. So I'm going to cut back to some of the lower points where I can see some new growth, and then I'll give you some close-ups to show you the new shoots that are starting to come through. So that's all the dead material now removed. As you can see, there's not much left of the plant. It's basically back down to the soil level. But you can see there's lots of little green shoots like this one down here. There's a couple back here and up here. And also, especially on this little cluster of stems here, there's a huge amount of shoots towards the bottom. There are one or two higher up, but not too many. So it looks like most of the growth might come further down. These have probably not been killed completely, these stems, but they've been damaged, and that's why the growth is probably a bit weaker than it is from the very base. So I've also cleared up most of the dead material that was lying on the surface, as a lot of the leaves had fallen off and was just kind of cluttering it, and that just kind of covers the new shoots, and they struggle a little bit to grow unless they've got enough light. But this should really put on a lot of growth now. The variety that I've got here is called Tom Thumb, so it's a very small flower, quite a small plant as well, nice compact size, so it's a good fuchsia to be growing on a patio or on a balcony, somewhere where you're going to have it in a pot. And I'll show you a picture now how it looked last summer. It was absolutely covered in flowers, and it kept kind of having flushes, so you'd have periods when it was completely covered in flowers, other periods when it was slightly less, and then it would just come back again with great flowers. So as you can see from that, it was quite a good display last summer. So I'm hoping this will get to a similar size. We'll just have to see with so much frost damage whether it will get quite that big by the end of spring. But I've got quite high hopes that it will. I find with fuchsia, even if you cut it back really hard, it can put on a huge amount of growth. It tends to store a lot of energy in its roots, and these new shoots, as soon as we get some warm weather, these will shoot up really quickly. What I'll also do is, once these are a few centimetres tall, maybe about 5 centimetres, kind of about this height, I'm going to give this a strong feed that's high in potassium, a tomato feed. That will encourage flowering. It's also got some other nutrients in there to encourage strong growth, and that will really help this to grow quickly. And as I said, I find with fuchsia, once the weather does warm up, they do grow really fast. So lastly, the only thing you need to do now is actually clean the pot. As you can see, I've got this quite nice pot. It's actually one that has a solar lamp on the top, so it lights up at night. But it's got quite a bit of black mold on it. That's just basically I had aphids on this last summer. The aphids droppings have kind of attached themselves to the pot and made it go black. So I'm just going to give this a quick wipe now, and it should freshen up the pot and make it look a lot nicer again. So that's the pot freshened back up with a bit of cleaning, and I'll give you guys an update in a few weeks' time. Hopefully we'll get some nice strong growth, and hopefully as early as June we'll start getting some nice flowers in this one. So my other fuchsia here, as you can see, is quite a different kettle of fish. It's the variety here is Voodoo. It's a very, very large one, complete opposite to that fuchsia. That fuchsia had flowers that were probably only about 1 centimetre or 2. These ones are almost the size of my palm, and I'm 6'4", so I'm quite tall. I've got quite big hands. But I'll show you a picture now of how big it compares to my hand. So as you can see from that, they're really quite large flowers. So the history with this one is I was basically training it along these kind of bamboo shoots. So the idea of this was to have layers and layers, and it kept coming up, and there was actually further layers up here, and it was getting so out of control that I had to cut it back. So I've only got these two kind of sections at the moment, but the idea was you have it flat so that the flowers hang down. Because the flowers are so large, they'll hang down out of the foliage, and it'll be a lot more showy and easier to see the flowers. As I say, that got too unwieldy just because I kept increasing the structure, especially when I had more shoots coming down here and along the bottom here. So I actually cut that back a lot, and I just kind of made the top a bit like a standard, like a round top. But I want to change it a little bit again this year. So what I'm going to be doing is I'm going to be adding one more layer at the bottom here, I think. There's some new shoots coming up. I'm going to train them in. I won't bother with the uprights, I don't think, but I'll certainly train them in on the flat section, because last year these flowered quite nicely. And the top I'm just going to keep as a standard, so I'm just going to cut that into more of a round shape. Now, one thing of note that I would say is I did make a graft here. So you can see the two shoots come up, and then they rejoin into one shoot and then continue upwards. So I might try and do some more grafts in the future. That was quite a successful one, and it looks quite good, I think. So I might try and continue something similar to that. But for now, I'm just going to go ahead and I'm going to prune the top. So you can see the top here, there's quite a few new shoots coming on it. There's quite pale yellow colour at the moment as they're just starting to appear. But I just want to give this a slight prune, just kind of reduce the size a bit. I want it to branch a bit more clustered and make more of a rounded shape. At the moment it's still a little bit flat, so I'm going to pull in the sides, pull in the top, but I'm going to keep the distance here to make it more of a rounded shape. So I'll give it quite a good trim, just to pull it back slightly. And I'll also remove some of the dead material. Some of the thinner stems might have got a bit of frost damage over the winter. This one isn't actually hardy, can't take any frost, so what I've been doing is whenever there's been any kind of sign of frost, I've been taking it inside the flat, and that's why the stems have survived without any frost damage. But some of these smaller stems might have had a touch of frost, and that's where they've died off. So that will probably do. I don't want to take too much off as I'm trying to keep a nice kind of pom-pom shape. What I will do is when all the new growth comes through, I'll pinch off a lot of the shoots. That way that I should be able to encourage more branching, and it'll be quite a dense kind of ball shape on top covered in flowers. As for the lower down sections, I think I might have pruned some of this off last summer because I can't see much growth coming out of these. But there's loads and loads of buds starting to form on the edges. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to allow them to grow a little bit and then flower, but I'll keep cutting them back to the main stem just so it stays in this general kind of setup. I don't want this to start branching out. The only place I will allow it to branch out is down at the very bottom, so I can put in a couple more horizontals. So I think that's all that's left to do is check all the string. Some of the string's getting a bit tight now where it's starting to thicken up. And I need to make sure the support here with all the bamboo is keeping it in a more of a straight position. It's kind of going off at an angle. So I'm just going to tweak it just a little bit to try and keep it slightly straighter. So coming down now to the bottom of the plant, the stem has thickened up quite a lot, and you can actually see this string is now cutting in. So I'm going to have to cut this string off and retie it so it doesn't cause any damage to the main trunk. You can see there, that one was cutting in a tiny bit, but not too much. But I'm a bit worried about this one. No, I had to tie it on very tight in the first place so that this could stay nice and rigid and straight against the bamboo cane. But now it's just become a bit too tight as the plant's grown over the years. So I just need to snip this off and then retie it. So that's all the string taken off. You can see that there is a bit of damage there. You can see where it's kind of cut into the stem, but it's not too bad. I managed to get it in time that we shouldn't get any major problems. So I'm just going to loosely tie this back on now. Now that it's been freed up, I can just tie this back on and it won't cut into it at least for a few more months until it starts to grow again. And as I said, what I might do in the future is train some of these newer shoots along the bottom here to have one more level, because I quite like that level that's higher up there. And that should give in just an extra bit of flowering space. And then, as I said before, I'm just going to continue with the top in a kind of pom-pom shape. I'll give you guys an update in a few weeks. This is starting to grow quite nicely. I'm sure this will be green within a month. And hopefully as well, this will be flowering by June. It might be a bit later. These really large flowered fuchsias take a bit longer to get flowering, so it might be July. But I'll give you guys an update when it does come back into flower.